Okay, here's a video that explains, goes through Chapter 1, Section 2 of Practica Musica in the Exploring Theory section. So if you'll go to that, we'll talk through this. So we've learned about whole steps and half steps on the keyboard and the difference between the two. We've learned about octaves. We're going to talk about writing music now and reading it on the staff. So we've got two main clefs that we use, and the clef is actually it's a French word that actually means key. And so what it does is it shows us, the clef shows us where the half steps are on the piano. So we've got it between those half steps between the G and the F and the B and the C. And that's where clef comes from. The one that we're used to seeing, the two that we're used to seeing are the treble clef and the bass clef. We also call it the G clef, and the reason why is because it kind of looks like a, you do your clef here, and it kind of looks like a G, right? And the line that this part curves around is the G line, right? So if you right? So that kind of looks like a G, and it curves around the G line. That's where that centers out. So that's G. If middle C is here, we've got G up here. And that's this line right here. Okay? So that's why we call it the G clef. The other clef is the bass clef, and that's called the F clef, and I'll show you why. If you put the bass clef there, you put these two little dots here. Those two little dots surround the F line, okay? And if you use your imagination, and it used to be kind of more this way, it's a stylized F, just like this is a stylized G, right? This is kind of a stylized F, right? And the F surrounds the F clef, the F line. So we call that the F clef or the bass clef. And that F lies down here below middle C. Okay? There's kind of a couple notes that are, and we'll get into okay, so that's the F clef and the G clef, or the bass clef and the treble clef. If you put them both together with a bracket at the end of the system, we call that the grand staff. You got a treble clef and a bass clef, and pianists, they'll read, right? They'll read both. They'll have notes written down here, and they'll have notes written up here, and they'll be lined up vertically, and they read off the grand staff. And so you can see the whole keyboard on all of those notes. On both of those staves. Okay, so that's the grand staff. What I've been writing here are whole notes, and it typically takes up the whole bar if you have whole notes. We're going to get into rhythm next time. The durations of notes. Right now we're just going to use whole notes though, just to show the pitches. Okay. There are some mnemonic devices that you can use to learn how to read the notes. This is a good one. The spaces, you can put a whole note in the space, or put notes in the spaces, or you can have them resting on the lines. The spaces spell face from the bottom, F-A-C-E, and the lines on the way up spell E-G-B-D-F. One mnemonic device is every good bird does fly, or every good boy does fine, or you can come up with your own mnemonic device. The bass clef kind of has the same, A-C-E-G, all cows eat grass, and or all cars eat gas, or something like that. And good boats do float always is the lines if you had stuff on the lines. Good boys do fine always, or something like that. There is a Practica Musica activity that will test you and exercise your ability to read those notes and play them on the piano, how they correspond to the piano. Okay, the other thing is ledger lines. Now, the E here, right here, this E, is this note right here. And the highest note on the bass clef in the staff would be the A. So you've got these notes in between that don't have any lines or spaces, so we kind of have to create them ourselves. For E, we can come down to D and put it right below the staff. That's D, it's resting in the space below the staff. If you want to go further, then we have to use what's called a ledger line. You've got a C there, and you want to keep it about the same space distant from the staff. So that would be a middle C. Okay, so that's that. It's kind of deceiving when you're looking at a grand staff because we've got A here, and then if we want to make a B, we can do B here, and then if you want to do another middle C, it's just right here. So these two notes are actually the same note. And you want to keep the ones in the bass clef, if you're showing it in the bass clef, you want to keep it right, use the same spacing as these lines for your ledger lines. So you make it, you go up about the same space, and you draw a line, and then you've got your C. Now you can do more ledger lines, like if I wanted to do a D in the bass clef, I would draw the ledger line, the C ledger line, and then write the D. And then if I wanted to do an E, you draw two ledger lines. Try to keep them about the same space. They're a little bit more spaced out in this. And then you've got an E up here, right? So this would be the equivalent of this note and this note. You might think, why do you use ledger lines? Well, you might have something playing in the right hand up here that would be up, up in this register, and then you'd want the left hand right? So you'd want the left hand to play up here, and you'd have the right hand playing up here, so you could use ledger lines in the bass clef to show that, or you could do it the other way. You could have something playing down here, and you want the right hand to come down here. Right? And so you'd have ledger lines showing these notes down here that go below middle C. And if we were to do that, then we would just hold C. No, that's not a very good C. A little tough drawn with a sketch pad. C, B, A, G. And notice that the ledger lines, you only draw the ledger lines, you never draw a ledger line underneath the note on treble clef, and you never draw a ledger line above the note. Like you wouldn't do this. You wouldn't put a ledger line here to show that that's a D. You just show the ones that it's sitting on or that it's on itself. Okay, so that's ledger lines. Pretty simple. And you can do it above the staff too. For instance, if you want to go up higher than the staff, so this note is an F. Every good boy does fine, and that's this note right here. If I wanted to go up higher, then I'd put one on top of the note, just like I did in bass clef. And then you've got the A there. So that's this note. Right? So that would be an A above the staff. One other thing that I wanted to show you, we also can call them by their numbers. So middle C, right here, is C4. Okay? The octave above middle C is C5. The octave below middle C is, you might guess it, C3. And the numbering starts and ends with C's. So this would not be B4. It doesn't start on A. This would actually be B3. And this one here, the D would be D5. The B here, because it's below the C, would be B4. Okay? So you go C4, D4, E, F, G, A, B4, and then it goes to C5. And that's when the numbers start over. And so that'd be C3. If you wanted to do a C2, you'd do 2 ledger lines down here. That would be C2. And then if I wanted to do a B below that, what would it be? B1. And then if you go even further, you get into zeros. Okay, so that's how the numbering works. If you want to get really technical. Okay, let's go to the next section. Yep, got that. Reading with ledger lines, we'll do that in Practica Musica. Give you some. Okay, now these are some other clefs that you don't see very often. And what this is it's a movable C clef. We call it a C clef because it kind of looks like a C. It's kind of a stylized C. And to handwrite it, I usually just go like this. Right? And if you think of it creatively, that kind of looks like a C in there, right? Not a B. And this little arrow points to middle C on all of these clefs. Okay, so if I were reading this middle line would be a C clef. C. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I don't want to confuse you, and we don't use these clefs too much. Okay, so and then there's this octava clef that transposes it down an octave, and we're not going to worry about that too much. Okay, writing by hand. I taught you about that. It's pretty easy to write a treble clef, and I'm going to zoom up a little bit here. Okay, so the first step is to draw a line straight down. Then you start, and the line should go about a space above about a line's length above the staff. So I'm going to draw that again. Here's our line. And then you start here and you go down to the second line. You come all the way around to the bottom and around the G. That's an easy way to draw a treble clef. I usually just get used to doing it like this and just drawing it more curvy. Okay, so that's the treble clef. The bass clef, you can start with a dot on the F clef and draw it around and just do a big curve like that goes all the way up to the top and all the way down to the bottom, and then you put your 2 dots around the F line. And that's your bass clef. And you can practice that. You're going to have a little bit of practice as we go on with that. Okay? I'm going to do section 3 here just because it's so short. So we have these black keys, and anytime you go from a C up to a black key, there's not a line or a space, right? You've got a C and a D. So you can write it 2 ways. You can write it on a C line. Okay, so let's do treble clef here. And I'm just going to do a C. So I've got my C, and I want it to go up a half step. So what I do is I put a sharp before it. It's just a number line that is right in line with it, and you want to write all of your accidentals before the note so that the players can know that when they see that C, it's a sharp. We call it a C sharp, not a sharp C, but you want the sharps and all of the, we call them accidentals, sharps and flats and naturals are accidentals, and they raise or lower the pitch a half step. So sharp raises 1/2 step, whatever note is in front of it. So like if I had an F here and I did a sharp, the F here is that, but then I raise it a half step, and that's an F sharp, so that you know how to play that. Okay, a flat, on the other hand, and I'm going to do bass clef for this, a flat lowers 1/2 step. So if I did a B here and drew a flat in, that is this note right here, B, and then I make it lower a 1/2 step. So it's that flat note. So if I wanted to do a G and make it flat, G, flat. And the flat that's a G flat, but it's also a C sharp, right? It's written as a G flat, but you could also write it as an F sharp, right? When we do that, we say that these are enharmonic equivalents. They're enharmonically the same, meaning they sound the same. A G flat sounds just the same as an F sharp. You'll find in music that they are written differently, kind of like a spelling word, you know, like for instance, right. That sounds like right. It also sounds like, and it also sounds like, right? They're all spelled differently, but they mean different things, totally different things, but they all sound the same. Same thing with enharmonic equivalents. The reason why a composer would write an F sharp is because if we're spelling a chord or spelling some kind of musical term or musical sound, you want it to be spelled correctly so that it means the same thing in context of the music. And we'll talk more about that as the semester goes on. So those are enharmonic equivalents. You can even sharp or flat a C, for instance. I'll put this C up here. A C flat. If I do a C flat, that takes it down a 1/2 step to a B natural. So we would say that a C flat and a B natural are the same, are enharmonic equivalents. Okay? So that's how that works. Sharps raise a 1/2 step, flats lower the 1/2 step, and naturals keep it on the white keys. When you would see a natural would be in a musical example, like if you had, let's just do it in treble clef, and I was going A, B flat, and then I wanted to come back to B, but I want it to be a B natural instead of a B flat. Right? So I got an A to a B flat, and then I wanted to go to a B natural. I'd want to put that natural in there so that the musician didn't think, oh, that's just another B flat. So you use naturals to return it to the white keys. Then it's got some others. It's got double sharp, which raises it by 2 1/2 steps. And for handwriting, so this is lowers, naturals keep it to white. A double sharp, boy, that's not a very good treble clef. Double sharp is just an X when you're handwriting, and that means that you raise it 2 1/2 steps. So C, C sharp, that's 1/2 step, 2 1/2 steps, and that, the enharmonic equivalent, would be a D natural, right? Right? So an X raises 2 1/2 steps. Okay? And then you can have a double flat too. So if I went to a D and called that a double flat, that equals a C. Right? B, down a half step, down another half step. A double flat, lowers 2 1/2 steps. Okay, so that's our accidentals. We call them accidentals. Not sure why we call them accidentals, actually. I just always have. Okay, so one of the activities that we'll do is the major scale. And remember, the major scale goes whole, 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 half, whole, 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 half. And one of the things that you'll be able to do is play the major scale starting on different keys. So if I started here, then that's just all naturals. If you start on an F, for instance, you go whole, whole, and then you need a half step. Right? So if we were to write that out, if we had our treble clef, we wanted to start on an F, F to an A is a whole step, or F to a G is a whole step, and G to an A is a whole step. Now we need a half step. If we went to B, that'd be a whole step, so we need to go to a B flat. And then we go to our C, which is a whole step. Right? Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 and then another half. So we could say that the F major scale has one flat in it, and it's a B flat. And in the Practica Musica activity, you'll be able to practice playing major scales in different keys, or starting on different keys. Talked about enharmonic equivalence. And diatonic versus chromatic half step. Yeah, we can talk about that briefly. So when we talk about half steps, we could have like a C to a C sharp, and that is the same letter name, right? So if it's the same letter name and it's moving by a half step, we call that a chromatic half step. Okay? If we go from like a C sharp to a D, right? We've got a C to a C sharp, and we've got a C sharp to a D. It's still a half step, right? C sharp to a D, but we're changing the letter name. C sharp to a D, C to a D. We'd call that a diatonic half step. That's all that's saying. If the letter name stays the same, it's a chromatic half step. If the letter name changes to an adjacent letter, like a C to a D or a C to a B, like if we went from a C natural to a B natural, right? C natural to a B natural, that's still a half step, but the letter name is changing from a C to a B, and that would be diatonic. Okay, so that's what that's talking about. And that concludes Chapter 2. And you go ahead and move on to your exercises, and I'll make another video showing how to do those.